of the Institute for Habits of Mind, along with my powerful, beautiful, awesome colleagues, Bena Kallick.
Hi.
And Art Costa. And
Hi.
again, we wanted to give you a window into a conversation around the habits of mind. So in celebration of our 30th year anniversary of Habits of Mind, really starting to pay attention to some of the nuances and new thinking around aspects of the habits of mind. And we're so excited today that we're going to dive into responding with wonderment and awe. So one of the reasons why we started to get excited about Wonderment and Awe is two books that both Bena and Art and myself have been reading and getting really energized about. One is Tracking Wonder, and the other is Awe. And the thinking about how we are learning things from research, not just through some of the materials that we're reading and exchanging ideas, but also what we're learning over the past 30 years with action research and examples and ideas. So welcome to our conversation. If you want to pose a question to the three of us, please go ahead and do that, and we will respond to the questions as they come through. So let's get started and start to think about the idea of wonderment and awe, the notion of responding with wonderment and awe. So if we can start first thinking about the idea of wonderment and awe, and we'll take them separately. So let's start to look at awe first. So Bena, do you want to start getting us thinking about what does it mean to feel awe? And how do we start to describe that?
Well, I mean, I'm sure all of us who are on this call are feeling something about the emotional experience of 9/11. We can't ignore the fact that that's the night that we are on right now, and many of us have that emotional response to it. And I also thought it was very interesting because when Bush, as president, said that he had retaliated, he said, "Mission accomplished," remember? And what he said was shock and awe. And I started thinking about that in light of our conversation tonight, because what he was basically saying was shock, which is an emotional experience. I experienced the shock of this, and awe, I also experienced the fact that this is something awesome that we have accomplished. Now, whether we agree or disagree on that, I think the idea is that awe isn't always an experience of positive. It isn't always an experience of how fantastic this is. But in a way, what I think that we've learned from the research is that all the emotional experience is a positive one. It's the amazement, it's the feeling that you are totally in awe of what has just happened. It gives you goose pimples. It brings you the vastness of the mysteries of the world. The shock part of it is the negative part. But notice he even separated the two. You feel the shock, but then you also feel the awe. And I think that that's part of what we're learning is that awe is really that mysterious, wondrous feeling that we get, which is separated from the feeling of wonder.
Bena mentions that the 11th of September is etched in our minds. Do you remember where you were when you heard about or found out about those planes that flew into the Trade Center? One of the reasons why you remember it very well is because your brain secreted dopamine at that time, which helps us in remembering. So emotional experiences such as that stay with us for a long, long time. And that's one of the reasons why in our education today, if kids have an emotional experience along with their learning, they remember it very well. So they must feel satisfied, they must feel joy, they must feel eagerness. In other words, there is an emotional correlate to wonderment and awe that helps us remember and makes it a significant experience that we can never forget.
It's an interesting way of beginning to think about the notion of awe and the connection between awe and emotions. And so, as we started to play with these ideas over the past couple months, one of the things is that we're feeling something. Looking at a quote that was from Dashner Keltner on awe. And it was a statement saying, awe is the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends your current understanding of the world. Awe is about our relation to the vast mysteries of life. So the interesting dynamic is trying to figure out how do we sort of feel awe? How is it internalized? Because we're about to move into the territory of wonder in a minute or two.
Well, it's a feeling that you're in of grandeur. I might use that word. It's a feeling that there's something bigger than you are. It's the basis for most of the world's religions because there's a larger being, there's a driving force, there's something that is bigger than we are. We are minute atoms in the world, is tiny pieces, but there's something that is bigger that's driving us. You think about the human spirit. The human spirit is composed of wonderment and awe. That's what drives us. It's what explorers use, is what scientists use. It's the basis for all of our work with relationships with each other. And so it's a human drive that we all experience, and that is the basis for most of our science and history and experiences.
And yet it's really interesting how we recognize that it's been trivialized and cliche ridden by, wow, that's awesome. And nobody ever says, what are you responding to? What makes it awesome? And in fact, Art, you and I were just reminiscing about a cartoon that we saw where the teenager is going with the parents. And of course, they're taking him on this trip to the Grand Canyon. And they are so excited. And they say, we are going to go. And he goes, okay. And then they go along on this trip. And they get to the Grand Canyon. And the parents are going, oh my God, look at this. And the kid is going, let me see what else is around here. What's happening? And it's such an apathy, and the parents are wondering why. And then finally, he gets to play this incredible technological game that he had never played before. And he goes, wow, this is awesome. And I think it's that moment where for him, the mystery of all of the universe sort of came together in the amazing experience he was having, whereas for them, the Grand Canyon did it for them. And that sort of suggests to me that what we have to do is probe what makes something awesome. It's not enough to just say, wow, that's awesome, without also beginning to probe the question of what makes it awesome for you? What are your wonderings? And I think that crosses the bridge into the wonderings.
It also brings us back to the habit of mind responding with wonderment and awe. So when you respond, there's a conscious experience of what makes something wondrous, what makes something awesome. And so in schools, we need to, and at homes, we need to, as parents and teachers, we need to help kids know how they are responding. It's a metacognitive response. So tell me about what is it that makes something awesome for you. You say that you are flabbergasted. Well, what is it that's going on in your head to make you feel flabbergasted? You say that you are entranced. Well, what's going on with you emotionally or cognitively that makes you feel entranced? In other words, the responding with wonderment and awe is part of the habit of mind. It's not only the result, but it is the experience of having wonderment too. Explore that with your kids.
I think the other interesting part that I'd love to get, some feedback on from the audience that's hanging out with us. And hi, Pam, good to see you. The opportunity of thinking about what are the scenarios or contexts where you feel awe most significantly. So an example that Bena shared a moment ago is the idea of being out into the world. So the notion of not just seeing the Grand Canyon, but the opportunity to go for a walk in a park and really sort of be immersed in the wondrous aspect of blades of grass or trees or even decaying branches that have been fallen, and the opportunity to start being awestruck about how the world continues to evolve and morph and change. For me, another example is the idea of music, the notion that a musical experience actually can bind people together. So I remember recently I went to a Taylor Swift concert, and the opportunity of seeing just the magic of being in that physical live space and the connection, not just with the musicians, but also the connection and the camaraderie of the people. So that's another sort of way I start to imagine awe. But folks that are hanging out and spending time here with us live, start to think about what territories do you find awe? So would love to hear that in the comments. So as we're starting to move into the territory of bridging between awe and wonder, one of the things that Art, Bena, we talked about the idea that habits hang out together, right? So we talked about responding with awe, not the wonder part yet. And Art started to dive into a little bit of metacognition. The other interesting dynamic is that we can start thinking about the idea of gathering data with all senses. Can you talk a little bit about the synergy between why those two may actually continue to help not just probe what's awesome, but to give voice to it?
Yeah,
I think one of the best kind of examples, practical examples that I've seen is from Scott Wright, a fourth grade teacher in Upper New York State. And what he does is he has what he calls a noticing notebook. And all he does is he has the kids start to notice what they see. Notice. Now, noticing is really that first step of what Art was referring to as metacognition, the awareness, what I see, how I gather data from my senses, and how I become aware of the fact that this is something that just strikes me as being pretty awesome. And I think he uses that as the seedbed for further investigation, for further storytelling. But basically, the start of it is, what do I see and how am I paying attention to it? In the Tracking Wonder book, he talks about that quite a bit. Tracking it, looking for it, seeing what you find.
I think another part of that in gathering data through all the senses is having kids be aware of what senses they are using. What am I feeling? What am I smelling? What am I aware of around me? What are the colors? All of those go into part of that experience of feeling awe and wonder. In other words, if your mind and brain and intake is closed, you're not going to get any of that or no response. And so we need to alert kids to all of those wonderful, artistic, aesthetic responses that they have both in nature and in art and in music, as you said before, and encourage those in everything they do. The noticing notebooks are particularly healthy because they have kids write down what they are feeling. This helps them become aware and remember it. They also can share with others. So there is an interdependence thinking that goes with this as well. When I tell you about my awe of a common experience, and you tell me about yours with the same experience, that enriches both of us. And so keeping that noticing notebook, reviewing it, sharing it, adding to it, reflecting on it, going back to where you were in first grade or second grade and where you are now in, say, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, that enriches the experience. That's what makes it powerful and what makes it stay with you for a long time.
So I just want to read a comment from Michelle Hughes. Hi, Michelle. Good to see you. The idea of the opportunity for her to feel awe. So I live in awe of watching my daughter parent our grandson and the ongoingness of generations and how the ways of parenting have traveled from my great grandmother down to my daughter, though they've never met. So it's such a beautiful reflection, Michelle, and the opportunity to start imagining how that must feel, and in terms of like how that sits with you. I think that's also part of the vast mystery. So thanks so much, Michelle, for sharing that comment. And go ahead if folks want to continue to add comments in. We're more than happy to connect and interact with you as well. All right. So let's talk a little bit about wonder now. So again, from Dashner Keltner, I'm going to read a quick excerpt from Awe to get us started. So Art, I'm going to read this and then start to engage your reaction or response to it. So wonder is the mental state of openness, questioning, curiosity, and embracing mysteries. In our studies, people who find more everyday awe show evidence of living with wonder. They are more open to new ideas, to what is unknown, to what language can't describe, to seeking new knowledge, to experience itself. They feel more comfortable with mysteries, with that which cannot be explained. All right, Art. So starting to move into that territory, what is wonder and how is it related to awe?
Well, again, wonder is a basic drive that all human beings have. It goes along with being human. It explains the history of our science. You know, Aristotle said that all thinking begins with wondering. And so that's the source of our scientific enterprise. A very good example of that is what we are experiencing these days with the James Webb Telescope. They've been working on it for years and years and years, and we put billions of dollars into constructing this monstrous space telescope. Why do we do that? Why would we spend so much energy and our resources on a machine that's going to go into space and we'll never see it? But my goodness, what we are finding as a result increases not only our knowledge, but it makes us wonder about more things. It helps us ask even more questions. And so we find that the world of science and art and music, if you will, is based on this desire of human beings to know more, to stand in awe of the universe and try to figure out why. What's causing it? What makes it? What's the extent of it? Where am I in it? And all those questions drive us to continue to find the world even more awesome and indeed wondrous.
Bena, so Bena, I just want to take a quick pause before we're having you join in the conversation. Quick shout out to Mary Sebastian from 21K who's joining us, as well as Catherine Kane and Kath McKenna, who's watching us live from Australia, having a little bit of glitches. So again, Chrissy will tag how you can get the recorded version as well, if it's still not being cooperative with you. So one more thing, Art, before we dive into the conversation with Bena. Mary Sebastian from 21K wrote in the comment, she feels awe and wonder observing celestial events such as a solar eclipse, a meteor shower, or the images captured by telescopes and space probes. So Art, can you tell us a little bit of that quick snippet that you saw? Chrissy, again, is going to put it in the comments, so if people want to view it, but that kind of James Webb Telescope phenomenon that you shared with us so beautifully.
Yes. What we have is an image that the James Webb Telescope picked up in its exploration of space. And what it is a group of stars, but the stars are in the form of a question mark. Now, there's probably nothing so much unusual about that, but why this particular formation of stars, or whatever they are, forms into a question mark is kind of symbolic. In other words, we have a question as to why we have a question mark in space. What is actually going on there? How far away is it? What does it mean? Is it a symbol of something? Well, there's a larger power there maybe at work. And so this is what drives the scientists of NASA and any scientists around the world, that causes them to do what they do and to think what they think, is that wonderment by looking at celestial bodies or undersea or groups of people, because they can't figure it out. It presents a problem to them, which raises more problems in our mind. So humans have an eagerness to find out. They're very dissatisfied with ambiguity. They want things to be clear to them. That drives our science and drives our social learning as well. If you can show that picture, it would be wonderful.
I think Christy, I put it in the chat. So again, it's a quick video if you want to take a quick gander at it. I also know, Bena, you started describing.
I'm getting it. Yep, I'm getting it for us.
So, Bena, you
Here
also.
It is. Here's the link also to a lovely blog that Craig Gastower and Art did on the Webb telescope.
Yeah.
That really shows how this whole pondering and wondering couldn't have happened without careful attention to the habits of mind. And they show that in this blog.
There's our question mark.
I think it's such a wonderful example of a question and a question mark, and how to figure out what it's really meaning.
And Art, I mean, I think it's so fascinating in terms of how we try to just be awestruck by that visualization, but also want to start figuring it out. Again, exactly. The notion of tolerating ambiguity, because I remember that end of that quick video said something like, it may be two galaxies intersecting, or it might be aliens. So again, I think the idea of continuing, there's a little bit of conspiracy theory that we all have in us, but I think the opportunity of continuing to figure it out, I think that's part of wondering.
Yes.
Michelle Hughes says it's a symbol of earthlings wonderings. How cool.
Exactly. And that's a tribute to the human spirit, I think. The recognition that we are alive, that we have brains, that we have each other, and it's saying that the quest for knowledge and the quest for answers is unending.
It also brings us to one of the facets of wonder that are in the Tracking Wonder book, where he talks about the idea of one of the facets is hope. And I think we're all feeling right now, there are so many possibilities. And you can think of the possibilities as overwhelming, or you can think of them as hopeful. Like, look at how many possibilities they are. Who knows what that question mark is going to help us understand and where it will lead us to. So I think the wonderment leads to more wonderment. Yes, Catherine, yes, I think that certainly is true. And it's so beautiful that we have that experience, and that it can become a shared experience that we're really paying attention to. We pay attention to a lot of the awful things that are happening, but I'm not sure we pay enough attention to the wondrous things and how that really sparks all these exciting new ideas for us. The one of the reasons why we started exploring responding with wonderment and awe, as I recall, when we were all three talking, because we're thinking about which habit should go next, which one should we start talking about, how are we doing our reading? we all were thinking in our conversations among the three of us, how important it was to have that sense of responding with the positive, with the hopeful, with the flexibility, with the uncertainty, with the beauty of all the things that we might really notice. And I think that I hear very often from teachers, I love the habits of mind, but I'm just not sure what to do with responding with wonderment and awe.
Yeah.
And yet, maybe what we're looking for is too narrow a vision of what it might mean.
And I think that brings us to another question about, you mentioned Scott Wright and his noticing notebook. I think that's one example, but there are many things that teachers can do to help develop that wonderment and awe, such as what we've done in this program so far, is to intrigue kids with what's going on in our world today. But one thing that's very important is for them to express their wonderment, they need to have a vocabulary. And so building a vocabulary of wonderment and awe is a nice experience for them. Have them make a word list of all the feelings that they have and the names of the feelings: intrigue, grandeur, bewilderment, excited, focused, astonished, fascinated. All of those words we want them to use and know when to use. In fact, sometimes we even put them on a scale. In other words, all the way from being mildly interested to discombobulated would be at a very high level. And so increase their literacy of the words of wonderment and awe, and that helps them talk about it. It helps them become more aware of their own feelings and how to discuss them as well.
Yeah. Just a couple more quick shout outs. Philip, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Thailand. Good to see you. And Terry, lovely to have you here. His comment: we believe the beauty of animation is a wonderful medium to bring the stories of wonderment and awe for our kiddos in grades K through 6. So starting to think about the idea that oftentimes wonderment and awe is captured in a myriad of ways, including images and iconography and video, and the notion of trying to make wonderment and awe come alive. I think, Terry, the beauty of those animations are that it feels connected and real. And that's why I want to also go back a moment or two from a LinkedIn user at 724. So we'll put this up on the screen. It's another interesting dynamic that I'd love for Bena, if you can talk about this for a moment. Wonderment helps me relate to my daughters because it allows me to be cognizant of their interests and passions. I feel like a child learning again from them and students through admiration and compassion, and essentially slowing down to smell other people's roses. It's an interesting dynamic of thinking about connections. It's reminding me back to what Michelle Hughes was saying a few minutes ago in her comment. So can we talk a little bit about the notion of wonderment and relationships?
Yeah, and you know what's really so interesting is that comment really captures what, again, is a facet of wonder, according to what Jeffrey Davis says, which is he's saying one facet is that there's connectedness. And I think that's that thinking interdependently, that capacity to both be influenced by and connecting through something, and to really be able to share that experience. I think that's so beautifully stated. And of course, with your own children, with the students in your classroom, it's really that moment where you're connecting with what you're seeing, both of you, and you're using that as an opportunity. Again, what Art is saying, which is the more you develop the vocabulary for being able to describe that experience, the more connected it begins to feel. And, you know, sometimes I find that it's very interesting. Of course, my children now love it when I call them my children when they're 60 years old, but they're still my children, like in my view. And very often what I find is I'll have a conversation in which something will strike me and I will be so amazed by it. And when we talk about it, I find out they have a very different perspective. They see it amazing. They find it awesome. They get the same goosebumps, but all their associations are often very different from my associations. So what's beautiful about those kinds of adult-child relationships, no matter how old you become, is that sometimes just the lens of your own maturity and development brings another lens on what you see as particularly awesome.
I want to bring in the beautiful reflection of Mary Sebastian from 21K. Wonderment and awe are the keys that unlock the doors of perception, revealing the extraordinary within the ordinary and inviting us to dance with the mysteries of existence.
Wow. Beautiful, Mary. Beautiful.
Mary, I don't know what we did to create that gem, but
that is really quotable. And I think Mary is the person who had her students asking us questions at the last one. Yes. So she is really like, I hope she brings that back to her students. That's such a beautiful way of thinking about it.
So I think the other interesting dynamic is part of our conversation right now. Hopefully you're starting to see sort of the inner trappings of how the three of us continue to talk and imagine and create and wonder. It's really the opportunity to step back and slow down. And Art, I'm remembering something that you said in our last call around wonderment and awe. And you said something about the importance of getting students outside, not outside just in terms of recess and running around, but actually outside engaging in this kind of immersive experience. And you said to go inside, you want to go outside. And if you can reflect on that a little bit about the power of the natural world and the impact it has on a human being.
Yes. I hope that many of you reflect back on times when you were young, that your parents took you on bird walks or tree walks or whatever kind of walks you might want, but you got a different perspective. You can't find this in a classroom necessarily. There's more opportunities to find wonderment and awe in nature. To be able to look up and see the tall redwood trees, the changing formations of a cloud, to watch birds, for example, to catch their hummingbirds' iridescence, for example. All of these are experiences that contribute to our sense of wonderment. It's almost, it's an appreciation for the beauty of nature, the opportunities to ask questions that are outside, to see small things and to see large things. You can find as much wonderment in a little worm crawling in the grass, as well as seeing the Grand Canyon or a sunset. And so it's having those experiences again and again, and talking about them and sharing them and modeling them for the kids. That's what's so important. And what happens then is that when you go outside, there is that positive, breathtaking experience of being humble and finding something larger than just yourself. So it's being able to stay attuned to nature. It's being able to play around with natural experiences, and having kids then think beyond themselves, not just their own feelings, but also the feelings of other people, to share them and to express those moments of beauty or solitude that appeal to the emotions. That's where it's at. So the more opportunities we have to get kids outside, to stand in the redwoods or to feel an earthquake, that's what teaches us wonderment and certainly awe, that there's something bigger than we are.
You know, it's not coincidental that Terry Thorne, who is the person who does all the beautiful animations that help to bring kids outside and to notice the kinds of animations that he kind of has in terms of in innumerable ways that he's encouraging that kind of behavior. And the name of his company is called Wonder Media. And it's because I think he knows the wonder of it all through the media. So what a beautiful way for us to partner with somebody who gets it like that.
I think the another interesting piece is thinking about the importance of being present. And I think it would be helpful if we can sort of unpack that a little bit too. So it's one thing to go outside in nature, put your AirPods, earbuds in, I mean, listen to music, listen to your latest, greatest book. It's another thing to actually be present in the world in that moment. The idea of trying to figure out what happens when you're truly present, unplugged a little bit, and the opportunity of how it impacts your mind. So, slowing your pace down as you're walking, starting to be more attuned to what you're hearing, but it also potentially has an impact on your mind. Your mind starts to settle down and quiet down. You're paying attention to the crunching of the earth under your feet. You're paying attention to like slower and more even breaths. And so I think that's so incredibly impactful. Catherine Kane's adding that there's a study my son has been working on that indicates nature can change stress levels in people. So I think that's so important and significant that we're not just doing this in our own adult worlds. We're actually trying to create opportunities or moments to actually have that part of regular practice. The other thing, Philip added a comment a few moments ago that's taking us in a little bit of a different direction. So wanted to get your thinking on this, Art. Yes, the explosion in AI has prompted two things in my thinking. One, to explore more deeply what it means to be human, and two, to implement far more outside activities, including with nature, field trips, and interacting with the community. So let's lean into number one a little bit. Again, I know that's something Art, Ben, and I have been sort of intrigued about in terms of AI and the connection to humanity. So thoughts in relation to what Philip suggested?
Well, just one comment about feeling awesome. AI is awesome to me. The reason why is because if you've lived before AI and now we have it, to see it in action, to see the possibilities is truly amazing. Mm. It's amazing what computers can do. It's amazing what our scientists have done to create AI. It's amazing to think about what impact it has, is going to have on today and in the future. And all that is very intriguing and asks a lot of questions. A question, of course, that comes up to all of us is how can we trust it? Is it true? Is it honest? And it explains a lot of what is happening in our legal world to make sure that it's used properly. When you hear some of our big leaders like Elon Musk and Bill Gates and so on, they talk about the political implications of all of this. So you see, it has very far-reaching implications for us. And I think all of that is a wonderful study into itself, because it is indeed awesome. And the way people are handling it is awesome. We want to keep it true and to keep it faithful to us, so that it is our servant and not as our slave. And applying that same idea to most any kind of a decision that's being made around the world, it makes everything that we do have a degree of awesomeness. And that's not always positive. When we see earthquakes in Turkey and in Morocco, these are awesome, but they're not positive. They're very deadly. And so we have to learn how to control those emotions as well. What I like to see is that as adults, we model being awesome in the presence of kids. Let them see us be entranced. Take your kids outside and watch the sunset. Keep watching it until it goes down below the horizon. Take your kids out and watch stars at night. Let them see you respond and ask questions and catch the thrill of seeing a meteorite, for example. All of those are opportunities that we model it, and when kids see it, they will do it as well. It gives them permission. It gives them an opportunity to see what it means to be an adult, because adults can be indeed awesome in the presence of children.
One thing that I think Philip's comment sort of stimulated my thinking was that I think that AI and being able to live in a certain amount of a virtual world in which there's so much that you have access to and you can see, and yet you're not there. So the question arises for me, and I think that this is true about almost all of this, is that it's going to challenge us to think more from the perspective of metaphor and analogy. I think it's really going to be challenging us that, for example, it's as amazing to see a firefly as it is to see a meteor. What makes them the same and what makes them different? What makes these experiences in the real world connect to some of the things we've seen in the virtual world? How do we keep making those connections? Because I think that when we start to do that, one of the things that I've been learning, and I'm thinking about what you were saying, Catherine, about stress and so on, that I'm learning so much about this idea that the body itself needs to be known. Yeah. So when you were asking, Allison, about what's the internal and the external, I think the internal, the body itself needs to be known. So if, for example, you realize, if I were to say to you, for example, look down, and you look down from your head, but then if I were to say, okay, now try to look down, but use more parts of your body to do so. And then think about what else is going on here? What else are you noticing your body is doing? And what I'm really talking about, I mean, there was a great person who did this work, Feldenkrais, but it really is this whole idea that I'm beginning to know more about how all of that then says to you, if in fact you had to be in a group and you were working in a group and you just learned something more about how your body works and how these things are affecting you, you could begin to make analogies, metaphors. You could say, wow, the redistribution of what was going on in my body opened up more possibilities for what I could see. Well, would that work when I'm working in a group? Can I do that same thing? Maybe distribution is going to help us to work differently together. So I think the challenge of all of this is what we learn on the screen, what we learn in our artificial life, so to speak, has to make the connections to our authentic understandings and see how they enlarge our possibilities and our thinking.
So we're going to wind down with one more question from Mary Sebastian. So she wrote, in today's fast-paced and technology-driven world, how can educators foster wonderment and awe in students who may be more accustomed to instant gratification and digital distractions? So we talked a little bit about some ideas already, but Art, Bena, do you have another one or two potential suggestions for Mary?
You know, one of the things that I always loved, Mary, and it's so simple, but it's that it's called DEAR. It's an old thing. It's called DEAR, drop everything and read. It's kind of all of a sudden, everything freezes and stops and we just read. And that became something that we used to call sustained silent reading. How long can you sustain silence and actually engage in something like reading. So I guess what I'm thinking is that one strategy is to really begin to measure your capacity to sustain yourself in something that's important and worthy. And it may be that you have to build the muscular capacity to do that.
Yeah. Art, do you have another suggestion for Mary?
Yeah, I think helping kids to pursue their own interests is very important. Sometimes a kid will ask a question, and teacher says, "No, Sammy, not now. We're not on that topic," or we're going to talk about that next week. It turns kids off. You got to be able to respond to them immediately and let them know that you appreciate. Well, maybe this isn't the correct time, but you appreciate their inquiry. You appreciate their inquisitiveness. Focusing on those behaviors that are elementary to wonderment and awe is something that is, I think, very important. Also, sharing something about yourself. I want to share something with the audience, if you don't mind. And that is that this year, my wife and I are celebrating our 70th wedding anniversary. Well, now, what is it about another person that makes you want to live with them for 70 years? My goodness. In our world today, it's and the world of Hollywood and so on, and the popular people that we meet, it's that's an awesome activity. It's an awesome accomplishment. Share that with your kids. Let them know that you are human, that you are an awesome being within yourself, that you have these capacities. Let them admire you from a distance, not because you're a wonderful teacher, but because you're a wonderful human being.
Yeah. It's so lovely. Mary Sebastian's also adding that she's been sharing with her students that she'll be attending this session with the creators of Habits of Mind. And I have a couple questions from them too. So
Good.
Mary, if you're open to it, we would love to actually feature a LinkedIn Live session that is organized by what your kids want to find more information about. So if that's something that's interesting to you, go ahead and reach out and put something in the comments, and then we will connect with you. But again, I think that might be just such a lovely and rich way to get student voices in the conversation, driven by what it is that they're curious and fascinated, especially because 21K is a certified school. So it is another beautiful example of continuing to extend the learning. So as we are coming to a close, I think there are a couple of things that we just want to just clarify. If this is something that's interesting, if you want to take a look at the Awe book or the Tracking Wonder book, we'll go ahead and put those in the notes, as well as the connection to this recorded video if you're a subscriber to the Institute. So that's something that you'll be able to have access to. And then the latest breaking news for us, and Art, Bena, and I are so incredibly excited about this, but we are hoping to have an announcement very, very soon about a 30th anniversary Habits of Mind conference that is ideally going to happen in early April in California. So if that's something that you're interested in or excited about, please subscribe to the newsletter for the Institute for Habits of Mind. That's the immediate way that you'll start getting more information. And we will continue to create these LinkedIn Live videos to get a sense of the conversations that Art, Bena, and I have an opportunity to have on a regular basis. Thank you so much, Art, Bena. It's such a joy to spend some time together. Appreciate it.
It is. And, if you want to see that there's a pattern in all of this, Art will be celebrating his 70th anniversary in the year that we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Habits of Mind. So here's to longevity.
That's right. And Art, the secret is that you're only 75. So you were a young bride. We're not doing Finding Humor, not yet. That's going to be in October.
Not yet. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Such a joy to spend time with everyone, and looking forward to connecting with you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.